JetBlue Airways has grown up. In less than 2 decades, the New York City-based airline has gone from a quirky startup to a major mainstream player. It is now the 5th largest U.S. airline by passengers carried, and its network stretches from Maine to Peru. But 2018 was a rough year for JetBlue. Its stock tanked nearly 30%. The airline laid off workers at its corporate headquarters to cut down on costs. And it struggled to reconcile the impact of huge fuel bills and investments like expensive cabin upgrades, which aim to fit more travelers on board and update amenities.
We're exiting that awkward teenage phase and becoming adults. I think you'll see a big emphasis on doubling down on those points of strength. And then I also think, at 20 years old, we need to refresh some things. So our fleet.
The airline now has to prove it can grow in the big leagues and keep a lid on costs while it does it. JetBlue is a unique operation whose quirky roots wanted a loyal customer base. It's trying to hold on to that reputation as it goes even more mainstream in order to compete with the biggest players. To understand why, let's go back to JetBlue's start. JetBlue burst into the air travel market in 1999, promising to shake things up. The New York-based airline was the brainchild of Brazilian-born airline entrepreneur David Neeleman. He founded JetBlue with lofty promises, low fares, and a flying experience that would bring humanity back to air travel. And JetBlue did stand out. JetBlue had a fleet of brand new Airbus A320 jets, outfitted with leather seats and seatback screens that offered satellite television on all of its planes. That was revolutionary for a U.S. airline at the time. And there was only one class of service, coach. It set up a hub at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York and launched its very first flight to Fort Lauderdale, Florida on February 11, 2000. Its spunky energy and aggressive marketing helped it stand out. JetBlue executives also had a keen awareness of a major passenger demographic, travelers who were visiting friends and family outside of the continental U.S. Those travelers counter the ebbs and flows of leisure and business travel. JetBlue sponsored events and ran brand awareness campaigns to drum up interest in flying the new carrier to places like Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic and San Juan, Puerto Rico. JetBlue had not only pitted itself against the biggest carriers in the U.S., but against entrenched low-cost king Southwest. Despite the competition, customers loved JetBlue. Not long after it started flying, JetBlue wanted to go public. Its executives aimed to IPO in the fall of 2001, but the September 11th terrorist attacks delayed that plan. Its plan also came amid a recession when a lot of U.S. airlines faced slumping sales as passengers avoided air travel in the aftermath of the attacks. It ended up listing on NASDAQ in April 2002, just over 2 years after it started flying. It was initially a success. Its stock rose 47% in 2003 alone, but it later struggled. Shares hit their stride in the mid-2010s as the U.S. was recovering from the Great Recession. In 2004, JetBlue entered international markets when it launched service to the Dominican Republic. As low-cost airlines grew, larger and more traditional rivals took note, and they debuted their own offshoots to compete with JetBlue and other budget airlines like Southwest. Delta and United both attempted this, and both failed. By the end of 2012, JetBlue was serving 75 destinations with a fleet of 180 jets. The airline that started out as a fun, no-fuss alternative to big carriers then started going after business travelers. In 2014, JetBlue launched Mint, its first business class and the first time it had more than one class of service on a plane. The seats could recline into a small flatbed, and passengers were given more options for dining. The price started at around $600 one way, a fraction of the going rate on other airlines. And keep in mind, business class seats are a huge moneymaker for airlines. Premium seats, like business class, account for 30% of international passenger revenue, even though they just make up 5% of all flyers. So Mint gives JetBlue a real edge against its biggest competitors. But JetBlue's rapid growth was also met with several challenges, from impatient investors to recessions and operational problems that resulted from its vast expansion. One of its biggest operational flops came in February 2007. JetBlue's bungled response to an ice storm that hit the Northeast stranded passengers for days. Travelers sat on aircraft for more than 7 hours. The airline was late in canceling flights, adding to the chaos because pilots and flight attendants were not ready to restart operations. Neeleman, JetBlue's founder and then CEO, told the New York Times he was humiliated and mortified. He issued a long apology to customers and introduced a passenger's bill of rights that set compensation for when flights are delayed or canceled. The board ousted Neeleman from the CEO role 3 months later. The incident sparked new federal rules that fine airlines for passengers that are left on planes on the tarmac. Airlines now face fines of nearly $28,000 per passenger if they're left on planes on the tarmac for more than 3 hours.
I think the customer has a much bigger voice now. So when JetBlue was founded back in '98, there wasn't the internet, or it was very early stages, and customers didn't have a way to really communicate what they expected publicly about their air travel. We think feedback is a gift, and we value it from our customers. We were one of the first carriers to take to Twitter and embrace it as a communication tool and a customer recovery tool.
Eager for a bigger piece of the West Coast, JetBlue in 2016 made a bid for rival Virgin America, but its Seattle-based competitor Alaska Air Group won out. Also in 2016, JetBlue set out on an aggressive cost-cutting program to slash expenses by up to $300 million a year by 2020. As part of that plan, the airline let go dozens of office employees in layoffs and buyouts. In 2018, the airline continued to struggle with on-time arrivals, a trend it chalks up to flying into congested airports in big cities. Late arriving planes and other disruptions could mean higher costs for the airline and a bruised reputation. Despite these setbacks, JetBlue's business model has proven resilient. It's continued to expand, adding new destinations like Bogota, Colombia, as well as more business routes from big hubs like Boston. A nod to its tech-focused roots, JetBlue has a venture capital arm that has invested in electric aircraft startups and travel booking platforms, among others. In 2018, JetBlue said that it's adding a stripped-down version of Coach, which does not come with a seat assignment and other perks, known as Basic Economy. Delta, United, and American already offer that class. JetBlue is also expanding Mint as fast as it can and is considering starting service to Europe. But even with these changes, JetBlue shares lost 28% in 2018, which was more than the industry average. That same year, an index of 15 airline stocks, including JetBlue's competitors, dropped 22%. Investors are worried about how the carrier and its competitors can raise revenue and keep a lid on costs. The newly designed cabin started to enter JetBlue's fleet in May 2018 after delays with suppliers. Its pilots unionized in 2014, and its flight attendants followed suit in 2018, promising to drive up labor costs.
Sure, every company evolves, and we aren't who we were back in 1998, 1999. And so as you evolve, you have to be willing to make tough decisions, but you have to make them in a smart way that protects your customers, protects your crew members. And I think we've been willing to make those decisions with the crew member being kind of center and recognizing that it really is kind of the core of delivering that experience.
Higher fuel prices took a toll on JetBlue, as they did the rest of the industry. As of January 2019, its international destinations were limited to Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, and a handful of countries in South America. JetBlue has said it's considering adding transatlantic service, and the airline has planes on order that can make the trip from New York to London. Some analysts have said JetBlue could open itself up to a bid from one of the big three airlines. But for now, JetBlue is still clinging to its plan to aggressively cut costs and expand its list of destinations. Investors and customers alike will be waiting to see whether the startup turned mainstream airline is able to make it happen.